Hello shrooms and glooms, and welcome to a new video. Sorry that the video is in text-to-speech, I just really wanted to talk about all of the new content we got yesterday, including the Watching and Dreaming poster and the HD portraits from Hollow Mind, so today I wanted to break them all down and figure out a timeline of events. From what we saw and thanks to them, all of the events seem to be taking place during and after Masha's story, showing Caleb and Philip growing up together in the human realm and playing witch hunters whilst the town were actively practicing it. We can also see a similar mask to Bello's Emperor's mask which Caleb made for him. And eventually, the two of them participated in the town's witch hunting practices. Before Caleb was seemingly whisked away by what I'd assume to be Evelyn, Caleb entranced in the world of witches whilst Bellows was scared and wanted to stay behind, being left behind as Caleb went to the demon realm, potentially spending years by himself in the human realm before deciding to follow him when he got older. I was under the impression that he adopted his Bellows facade after Caleb's death, but it looks like he did it prior to Caleb's death, presumably to hide the fact that he was a human. With that we can assume that the events of Elsewhere and Elsewhen also happened prior to Caleb's death, and Bellows was seeking the Collector's powers initially as a way to return to the human realm, or maybe he knew straight away that he wanted to eradicate witches because of his past as a witch hunter. By this point Bellows looks significantly older than when he first entered the demon realm, finally finding Caleb and discovering Evelyn is pregnant. Assuming that this is the first time he'd seen him since he left, it is clear that Bellows no longer had any intention to reconcile with his brother, and wanted to seek revenge against Evelyn, or potentially decided this upon seeing him with her. Although his initial intent when entering the demon realm was to find Caleb, his focus most likely shifted over time because of his resentment towards witches, and eventually, his resentment towards his brother. The next few events most likely happened consecutively rather than over a long period of time, and by the time Philip was able to confront his brother he had already began to become corrupted by the talisman he was confusing, and the glyphs that he carved into his arm. Despite Bellows being taken over by his corrupt ideals and magic, Caleb was still happy to reconnect with him and tried to welcome his brother back into his life with open arms, seeing that the two were very closely and Caleb always tried to look after him, and was essentially his guardian when they were younger because the two of them were orphans. Bellows most likely put up a front and planned to betray his brother, and Caleb wanted Bellows back in his life and even tried to introduce him to Evelyn, which we can never see her face. At this point I think it's pretty clear by her hair strand and their connection with Flapjack that she is a descendant of the Clawthorne family. Bellows then tried to fight his brother, most likely not long after introducing him to Evelyn, for betraying him to be with a witch, the very thing they were supposed to eradicate. Of course, Caleb didn't want to fight him, he wanted to reason with him. Which ultimately led to his death, seeing Bellows' reflection in the bloody sword, not remorseful, or sad, or even angry, just resentful. Evelyn then seemingly tried to fight Bellows just after, with Caleb's body shown in the forefront of the portrait which I missed the first few times looking at it. She most likely had every intention of getting rid of her, but it's unknown what happened to her afterwards, whether he killed her, whether she let him escape or he escaped himself. Assuming the latter is true, Evelyn most likely tried to warn other citizens about his intentions, linking back to Hollow Mind when Bellows told Luz that he adopted his Bellows persona after the name Philip got driven out of too many towns. We then see another image of Bellows consuming talisman, slowly becoming what he sought to destroy, although it's known whether this portrait was before or after Caleb's death. This might be the most gruesome image we see of Bellows, as he tries to fit into witches' society by carving his ear with the same dagger he used to kill Caleb, most likely much older at this point, or maybe he aged significantly quicker as a result of his talisman consumption, much like Ida's curse with the owl beast. Most likely prior to Elsewhere and Elsewhen, we see how Bellows carved glyphs into his arm with a dagger, which explains how he was able to manipulate himself in his fights with Luz at the end of Season 1. Bellows is seen conspiring with Liltia's old mentor Flora. Upon finding out that Lilith wanted to join the Emperor's coven, he most likely wanted her to fail under Flora's guidance, always intending to betray her and dispel her at his own convenience, out of revenge of their interaction when he'd first met her. Jumping back to the 1600s, we see the creation of the first Grim Walker. Even before Bellows adopted his persona, this seems to be the same cave we saw in For the Future, where Bellows tried to possess a Grim Walker that wasn't ready, that hopefully will have some relevance in the next episode, or maybe they just wanted to show it because they wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to otherwise. We then see a series of the Golden Guard's death, the first one being blasted by Bellows' magic and his artificial staff, and the other being petrified, as we know now too of many Grimwalkers that Bellows would ultimately destroy upon them quote-unquote betraying him. These next two images intrigue me because rather than showing a Golden Guard's death, it shows a particular Golden Guard that we also saw in the background of For the Future when Bellows was hallucinating. There's various scratch and burn marks on these particular portraits, most likely being one of the Golden Guards that became important to him, and a memory he tried to repress out of guilt, and the delusional that everything he did was for the greater good. Which clearly, it wasn't. This may have also been first Grim Walker he'd made after killing Caleb. The last image is the clearest one, the making of the portal door. No scratch marks, no burns. This particular memory isn't something he wanted to repress, as he saw it as an achievement, his malicious actions actually having a means to an end and attaining the goal he wanted, to go home and to claim the role as Witch Hunter General. Although there's now a coherent timeline of events between Bellows and Caleb entering the Boiling Isles and the events of the show, there's still so many questions to be answered. By the portraits, it seems as though Caleb was a good and kind-hearted person. Of course, any good person can make mistakes and ultimately selfish decisions, but I can't see him just abandoning Bellows, but that's the only way the story seems to make sense. It was clear Caleb always looked out for him throughout their lives, and most likely saw this as a means of escapism, to finally live a life for himself whilst Bellows stayed behind, the two of them slowly drifting over time. Then again, does that mean that Bellows just chose to stay in the human realm for all those years and then go after his brother when he got older? And what happened to Evelyn? Hopefully these things will be answered in the next episode. I'm not sure how they're going to tie everything together, but I'm really excited. That being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.